So this is part two. There'll probably be a number of parts in the false choices in relationship filter bubble brainwashing series. I guess it's a series now. And if you want to, please do watch the earlier video first. If you insist on me making that easier for you, because you don't want to just go to my channel page and look at the video before this one, then you're admitting to being lazy and you're never going to figure shit out on your own. Just be honest with yourself. So the the next thing I want to dive into is some of the details about these two different camps that keep getting presented to people, and both of them are dysfunctional and unethical. They both just make things worse. Both sides, most of the conversation is just bad advice. Almost all those talking heads, almost all the people who are popular influencers in the conversation about relationships and dating and love, they haven't done any research. And when they do point to a single piece of research, they misunderstand it or misrepresent it to draw a conclusion that they already had. They're just trying to justify their pre-existing belief. And it fulfills their narrative where they're building a story that they want you to believe. So that's very different from the old school method of education where you're supposed to learn the techniques of thinking on your own by learning on your own, actually going and looking things up and forming your own understanding. They want you to believe them without doing your own work. That's always a sign of a cult. So if you're listening to an influencer who just tells you what they want you to hear and you just shove the garbage in your brain, that is 100% your fault. You can't blame anyone else for that. I've watched the flat earther videos, but that doesn't make me believe them. I don't suddenly believe anything I hear. So if you're listening to someone and then you just decide to believe them, that is your fault. And it's going to keep happening until you stop doing that. That's just a fact. So you're going to have to get used to doing your own research, which means learning science. If you're not reading scientific papers, I don't know why you're listening to influencers. And that's why I recommend that you look things up on your own. I'm not going to do it for you. Learn how to use Google Scholar. Scroll down to the bottom of the Wikipedia page to where it says external links and references. Learn how to do that, or else you're just going to be believing a cult. So let's look at some details about the conversation in dating and love and romance. The idea that someone should be attractive to you. There's a problem with that. Only a small portion of people are considered attractive by everyone. So the idea that you should be with someone who's physically attractive would mean that everyone in your heteronormative gender grouping would target the same group of people. All the straight women would target the hot guys. All the straight men would target the hot girls. There's not enough hot people for people at the bottom to pair up. And it's really gross to think that if you're not physically attractive, somehow you are now more attracted to someone who's not physically attractive. Like the pretty girls and the hot guys both advise that you only be with someone that you find attractive. And the people at the bottom of that attraction distribution are saying, well, I'm attracted to the people at the top. I'm not suddenly aesthetically desirable myself, and I'm not going to aesthetically desire other people. Most of them. So this conversation about being with someone you find attractive is broken. It can't function. There's no way to have a healthy society with healthy relationships and healthy communities and families if people are targeting whoever they find most attractive. And on the deeper level, that's image obsession. That's a beauty standard. That's called vanity. And the people who are targeting the most attractive in the group that they want to date, those people are objectifying the other people. So if a woman insists that a guy be attractive, she is objectifying men. If a guy insists that a woman be attractive, he's objectifying women. It's just that simple. So your common culture on both sides of the heteronormative gender relationship conversation, they're both being image obsessed, vain, and objectifying their partners. And there's no way to have a healthy relationship that way. And both sides are saying, you're supposed to feed me what I want. I'm going to throw you away if you don't give me what I want. Give me my supply. Because what I wanted, the trads in the manosphere, they want a robot that does housework. They want basically just a person who's not really a person anymore. It's identical to the women who want a man to just be the provider and always be strong. They want a robot. These women want a robot man, and these men want a robot woman. Neither of them is looking at who the other person is and appreciating that person as a soul. Neither of them is admiring a human being. So it was more than 70 years ago that a guy named Martin Buber was writing about this concept. There's actually been a number of philosophers of love who've written about this concept going back thousands of years. But Martin Buber, I want to point out specifically, he was talking about the concept of I, thou, as opposed to I, it. So if you're relating to someone as an it, if you see someone as an it, you're saying, what are you going to give me? Why should I waste my time on you unless you're giving me what I want? And as soon as that other person doesn't give you what you want, you throw them away. That's an it way of treating another person. And that's the origin of our jargon objectification. So all the forms of objectification, from image to finances, someone who's making you happy when you're the only person who can be responsible for your own happiness, someone who's giving you limerence or lust, all of those things are objectification. They're treating the other person as an it to feed you what you want, and you throw them away as soon as they don't do that. There's no way to have a healthy relationship that way. The I-thou relation is when you see the other person's soul and you're appreciating who they are without needing anything from them, without desiring anything from them for yourself. You're just glad for who they are. And that was the original meaning thousands of years ago when philosophers were talking about unconditional love. Unconditional love is not that you keep loving someone no matter how abusive they are. That's not unconditional love. Unconditional love refers to preconditions. If someone says, I'm not going to even consider loving you until you buy me enough stuff. You have to buy me enough stuff before I'll even consider loving you. That's a condition. Unconditional love says, I'm willing to love who you are without getting anything from you for myself. You don't need to make me happy. You don't need to excite me. I don't need to get presents from you. I don't need to get your subservience. I'm willing to love who you are as you are. That's unconditional love. And so that's what Martin Buber talked about. That's what the ancient philosophers talked about. That's the foundation of a healthy relationship, is that you love who the other person is. And when you're loving who they are, when I'm feeling that admiration for another soul, I'm glad to be of service in whatever form they prefer. All your love languages talk about different forms of service, as if you have to be with someone who has a matching love language. That's ridiculous. If someone's love language is vocalizing appreciation, then I'm glad to do that. If someone's love language is gifts or service, I'm glad to do that in the way they feel it, because I'm showing my appreciation gladly and willingly. But as soon as they hold that as an expectation, as soon as that's a demand or a constraint, as soon as that's a condition, I'm not a servant anymore, I'm a slave. And I don't want to be with someone who's like that. Someone who looks upon me as a source of their own supply. I'm glad to be generous. I refuse to be exploited. And so now I want to get into how that applies in two particular pieces of jargon. These were originally very important concepts that were expressed by philosophers and psychologists and couples counselors, and then the therapy speak media bubble got attached to them and just morphed them into this insanity. So there's boundaries and standards. A boundary was originally a red line where you revoke engagement yourself. It's not about getting someone else to obey your boundary. You can't insist that someone else obey your boundary. You have to be the one to act upon your own boundary. And the boundary was about not being abused. Here's a boundary of abuse. And if you cross that boundary of abuse, I remove myself. That's what a boundary is. So what we have today are people saying boundaries like, you're not supposed to chew a certain way. You're not supposed to text a certain way. Those are not boundaries. That's called histrionics, where you take a molehill and turn it into a mountain, acting as if it's some horrible offense to you if other people aren't behaving exactly as you demand that they do. It's a form of ultimatum. Okay? So the concept that someone else must obey you in all of your whims and pet peeves, that's domineering behavior. So if you've ever used the word boundary when it was really just an ultimatum that someone obey your pet peeves, you are abusing the word boundary. And you are an abuser. A boundary is about not being abused. So let's look at standards. Standards come from the concept in ethics that if I expect a certain kind of behavior from someone else, then the only way I can do that is if I meet that level of behavior. I have to meet the standard that I hold over others. If I want to level a standard upon you, I have to lay it on my own head first. I have to surpass my own standards to be able to expect it of others. And this has shown up over and over again in many different ways. There's the old saying that a leader cannot ask of others what they are not willing to do themselves. There's many examples of this concept throughout ethics and culture after culture. A standard is something that I meet, and that's why I can expect it of others. It doesn't mean I get to demand it of others. If they don't meet my standards, I can't insist that they meet my standards. But I'm only going to engage with someone who meets the same standards as me. And if you are holding other people to a higher standard than you meet, that's called hypocrisy. And I guarantee every person who is ethical is going to be disgusted with you for being a hypocrite. Hypocrisy is disgusting. So when guys in the manosphere talk about wanting a trad wife who's obedient, then he needs to be obedient. When guys in the manosphere talk about how women shouldn't vote, he should not be allowed to vote. That guy. Or else he's a hypocrite and he's unethical. And the women on TikTok who are saying that a man's supposed to pay for her nails and her spa day, well, she's going to have to pay for his nails and his spa day. Or else she's a hypocrite. And everyone who is ethical is going to be disgusted with her. So you look at your standards and you ask yourself, do you meet them? You want a man with a six-pack and a six figures who's 6 feet tall? Then you better have a six-pack and make six figures and be 6 feet tall.